Bill Clinton, if there are photos, an investigation should open. Now, listen, there's no criminal...
Is there more evidence that Bill Clinton did something wrong than Donald Trump?
The problem with Donald Trump is listen, the problem with... Let me finish.
Hey, let me finish. People are so outraged. I wasn't stop talking. People are so outraged. You're so outraged about Trump.
Debates around Adam Mockler and Donald Trump are shaped by framing as much as by facts. In politics, interpretation can sometimes carry as much weight as evidence. Labeling opponents draws a line between loyalty and accountability, blending opinion with commentary to guide perspective. The real question is simple. Are viewers being asked to think or to agree? I'll add my perspective as we go. If you believe in progress and inclusion, hit subscribe. Let's dive in.
Let's roll it.
Let me just read for you, actually. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She says, this is horrifying. Trump called me a traitor for fighting him to release the Epstein files and standing with women who were raped, jailed, in stalls, and trafficked to men. Only evil people would hide this and protect those who participated. I pray for these women. The files today, I mean, people's names in terms of people who were involved, allegedly, are not in here. But it's very clear that there was something big happening behind the scenes. Tons of victims, tons and tons of evidence. That's why, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, if you know anything about this case, it seems entirely improbable that it was limited just to the two individuals who we know are named, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
This is why I believe that Ghislaine Maxwell's statement to Todd Blanche, 9 hours recorded, right? The audio's out there now, was so utterly non-credible, was so utterly non-believable, because Ghislaine Maxwell's version of events was nobody did anything wrong here except maybe Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell said, I did nothing wrong. If you believe that the only people who did anything wrong are the two people who've been indicted for this, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, I don't know what to tell you. But I want to point out another thing that DOJ is doing, to your point, Abby, that violates the law. DOJ has decided we are going to redact out the names of people who might have done wrong, but this might be embarrassing to. I understand that instinct, but let me read you what the law, the Epstein Transparency Act, says. It says, no record shall be withheld on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary. Now, if you don't like that, that's fine. But this is what the law says. And DOJ has said, we're going to take out those names anyway.
That's astonishing. What's astonishing is that DOJ is just flouting the law.
Well, let's put in context for the viewers, though, how unusual that is. Because I think we got a lot of lawyers and former lawyers on this panel. I think it is so unusual that I think the execution of it has some folks in the DOJ who have been there 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, as a lot of career people are, confounded because it's not what the policy has been.
Unusual, but it's the law.
Well, it doesn't make it impossible.
So what are you going to do? You're just going to ignore it?
I mean, that's right. I mean, Mark's right that all of this is contrary to what DOJ would ordinarily do. You'd never dump all of our investigative files. Right. You'd never name names of people who weren't indicted. But the law that passed 427-1 in the House, unanimous in the Senate, that Trump signed, says you have to do it this way. I think there's a lesson here, by the way. I think this law is overbroad. I think this law is leading us into dead ends, is leading us into all sorts of documents that are presented without context, but they have to follow it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yes. I mean, isn't the remedy for this, I don't know. They
don't have a remedy. They have to follow it.
Can't they challenge it?
No, I don't think DOJ has a basis to say, well, I mean, I guess
the
theoretically, I guess.
If the idea is that maybe people's rights are being infringed upon, could they not challenge the constitutionality of a law that forces them to infringe on maybe people's right to not self-incriminate or whatever it is?
It's a good question. Yeah, I think if DOJ was independent, they could go into court and say, yes, this violates the rights of uncharged people, the presumption of innocence. Pam Bondi has chosen not to do that.
Yeah. Let me play what the victims have been saying all day today. This is just a snippet of the reaction among some of the women who have come forward about their involvement in the Epstein saga.
I think that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel both need to resign, and I would love to see number 47 get impeached over this.
They are re-victimizing us in the same way. They gave us this moment of the Transparency Act where we passed a law and we were like, we're seen, we're here, we've arrived. And now to see the carelessness of the way that they're handling, survivors, it's just abhorrent. It's exhausting.
It's hard to hear that. It's hard to watch these women, as she said, be re-victimized. DOJ officials were saying, well, if you have a problem with how we're doing this, you know how to reach me, just call me. Some of them have. Nobody's done anything about their names being in these documents.
But Abby, that's the very reason why the sensitivity and the typical policy of the DOJ in conjunction with these investigations is what it is to avoid re-victimizing
people. But it is not happening. That is the problem.
We have photographs of a woman, more than one woman, who were clearly victimized, clearly trafficked. They've been adjudicated to have been victimized and trafficked. Receiving massages and being intimately touched by one of the most influential and consequential political figures in the United States of America, and that's Bill Clinton. Where are the Democrats demanding that there be an investigation
No
of
one
this
is defending
person?
Bill Clinton. I'll do it right now. Bill Clinton, if there are photos, an investigation should open. Now listen, there's no criminal...
Is there more?
The pushback here reflects a recurring political argument about selective outrage. The question of why discussions keep circling around figures like Bill Clinton, while critics focus on other political targets. When people keep asking, what about Clinton? It's less about one person and more about fear that accountability is being used as a partisan tool. But here's the structural truth. Justice doesn't become weaker when it is applied to everyone. Whether it involves Republicans, Democrats, or independents, the standard should remain the same. No serious voice in this conversation is saying only one political figure deserves investigation. That's why commentators like Adam Mockler frame the issue around broader transparency rather than single-name prosecution. Dragging everything into the light isn't about defending or attacking any party. It's about protecting victims, rebuilding trust, and making sure power cannot hide behind political loyalty. Because democracy doesn't survive selective truth. It survives consistent accountability.
That Bill Clinton did something wrong with Donald Trump.
The problem with Donald Trump is listen, the problem with, let me finish. Hey, let me
people
finish.
Are so
the problem
outraged.
with Donald
I wasn't
Trump,
stop talking. People are so outraged. You're so outraged about Trump being in a photograph.
The problem with Donald Trump is his repeated abuse of power dynamics. Throughout Donald Trump's entire life, he has abused power dynamics.
Wasn't screwing underage girls like Bill Clinton.
He walked into dressing rooms after he owned the beauty pageant. Have you seen the Howard Stern clip where he walked into dressing rooms?
Bill Clinton.
He says he grabs women because they let him do it. You can just keep talking over me. Can I say something?
Those are the enemy. Those are the bad guys.
Let's do this one at a time.
I'm going to include that Howard Stern clip at the end, so stay tuned for that.
Adam, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was trying to make a broader point that there's no criminal activity that has been proven with Trump, but his entire life has been spent abusing power dynamics. I don't even know if he knows what power dynamics are. He bragged about walking into the beauty pageant dressing rooms and 15-year-old girls then corroborated that and said he would walk into the dressing rooms. Abusive power dynamics. He said he grabbed women because they let him do it. You heard that clip, right? You've heard that clip. Abusive power dynamics. Abusive power dynamics. Now that he's in office, he's abusing these same power dynamics to cover up the files, delay the releases, redact the releases. I don't care about Bill Clinton, Joe.
Go ahead and respond.
Do we all agree that Bill Clinton probably molested women? I'm not laughing.
No, actually, wait. Actually,
do we all agree?
There are more photos of Epstein and Trump than Epstein and Clinton.
Molested children.
Hold on a second, Joe. No, we do not know that Bill Clinton.
He's not in a picture with you, Fred.
Joe,
he's not in a picture.
We do not know that Bill Clinton is doing what you are alleging.
Is there more evidence that Bill Clinton acted appropriately about
Donald Trump?
Where was Giuffre trafficked out of, huh? Where was Giuffre trafficked out of?
Hold on a second. Seriously. I think both of you, I get it, right? Like, there is a lot of politics involved here. But at the end of the day, there are people involved. We don't know all of them, who they are. The political world is now focused only on two men for competing political reasons. And the people left in the rubble of that are women who were actually trafficked. This doesn't make any sense.
One of them, the women have said consistently that they were not touched by Donald Trump.
But your entire focus on just these two individuals completely obscures the bigger picture.
I'm not. I just know that there's a photo of that guy.
All I will say,
I don't know the other people.
Hold on a second. All I will say about Bill Clinton is I take him at his word that they want every document released. They don't think they have anything to hide. I would like to see President Trump and his administration say and act similarly, because I think that would be refreshing for the political system. Let's all sides of this just say put it all out.
Let's talk about one of the areas where things have really gone wrong with this situation, why we wound up with this Epstein Transparency Act that directs the DOJ to do something that have no historical precedent to my knowledge, right? And I practiced law for a couple of years too, as you know.
This moment shows how a long political fight turned into a formal rule on the books. After debate over securing enough votes, the measure was passed and later signed into law by Donald Trump, following the point raised by commentator Mark Lepre. The key takeaway is that the transparency issue moved from political argument to legal requirement, something remarkable in how this process unfolded.
Why did it take this long? How many presidential administrations? How many reviews of these investigations? Why does it take this kind of an extraordinary act that is re-victimizing these poor women once again? What's been going on for the past 15 years? That's what we should be asking.
That is the question.
That's what we should be asking.
One of the few important, indisputable things that we've learned from this is that victims were coming forward to the FBI as early as 1996. There's a lesson there. Forget about your politics. There's a lesson there in being responsive to victims and giving them a fair hearing. Look, the original sin in this case was 2007, 2008, when Alexander Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney for the time, gave this absurd softball deal to Jeffrey Epstein, let him serve 13 months in state custody instead of he should have done decades in federal prison. By the way, that's one of the outstanding questions here. It's one of the things we've not yet seen in these documents. What were those prosecutors in that office saying? Because we know from prior OPR reports that there were prosecutors in that office. Maria Villafana is the name of one of them. That's public, who objected to that softball deal. That's something we need for accountability.
Some of the many documents I think that the victims want are things that speak to that. They want to see more financial documents. You know, I think that in a way, when you hear them, they're not as worked up about these photographs as many of the people in the public are, because they want the investigative documents that point to what happened in these investigations. Why was that 1996 complaint not ever followed? What does it say on the flight manifests and the ledgers, the financial ledgers? Important information that's not out yet, should have been out last Friday, but here we are, law just being kind of casually flouted by the administration. We'll see how long that continues. Next for us.
The conversation is really pointing toward a broader democratic anxiety, the fear that political identity is becoming more important than truth itself when discussing figures like Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. What's being challenged is the narrative that citizens must choose between defending one powerful individual or attacking another. Commentators such as Adam Mockler frame this as a false moral equation because justice is not supposed to function as a political scoreboard. You know, the deeper psychological pattern here is about group loyalty. When people feel their political community is under attack, they often respond by redirecting criticism toward the opposing side's historical scandals. That's why references to Clinton-era controversies keep resurfacing, not necessarily to demand investigation alone, but to neutralize perceived partisan targeting. But here's the structural warning embedded in this argument. If society begins accepting the idea that investigations should only move forward when both sides are examined simultaneously, accountability can become paralyzed. Power should be evaluated based on evidence, not on whether another public figure is also accused. The speaker's focus on abuse of power dynamics reflects a long-standing concern in political ethics, that fame and authority can create environments where victims feel isolated, like in cases historically discussed around high-profile controversies involving powerful individuals. And at the heart of this is a simple democratic principle, that transparency is not punishment and investigation is not conviction. Investigations exist to prevent institutions from protecting anyone, including figures such as Howard Stern, who were referenced in related commentary about cultural normalization of certain behaviors.
A past interview with Howard Stern now making headlines. Trump talking about how he had free reign at his beauty pageants.
I'll go backstage before a show. Yes. And everyone's getting dressed and ready. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant and therefore I'm inspecting it. Is everyone okay? You know, they're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
Today, a former Miss Arizona who calls herself a conservative going public in an interview with KCBS describing what she says happened backstage with Trump at a Miss USA pageant.
Our first introduction to him was when we were at the dress rehearsal and half naked changing into our bikinis.
Tasha Dixon detailing her discomfort.
To have the owner come waltzing in when we're naked or half naked in a very physically vulnerable position, and then to have the pressure of the the people that work for him telling us to go fawn all over him, go walk up to him, talk to him, get his attention.
She describes feeling helpless.
Who do you complain to? He owns the pageant. So there's no one to complain to. Everyone there works for him.
The core of this discussion isn't simply about scandal or individual behavior. It's about the structure of power itself and how democratic societies either enforce accountability or quietly normalize impunity. Adam Mockler frames this as a fundamental question. Can a democracy survive when allegiance to party, celebrity, or wealth becomes more important than adherence to evidence, morality, and law? When you hear names like Donald Trump or Bill Clinton repeated in the context of abuse or misconduct, the argument isn't about partisan scoring. It's a lesson in principle. Both men, emblematic of vast political and cultural influence, illustrate how power can shield wrongdoing if society allows ideology to outweigh scrutiny. And it's not just politics. It's about the networks, structures, and systems that enable misconduct to persist, quietly, invisibly, until victims are left unprotected. Take Jeffrey Epstein as a case study. Wealth, access, and elite connections created a near impenetrable fortress around his crimes. And this is echoed in commentary about figures like Harvey Weinstein, where institutional hierarchy silenced victims without a single overt threat. The system itself became the weapon. Careers, social mobility, and access to power all depended on compliance, creating a moral environment where wrongdoing could flourish unnoticed. The commentary repeatedly circles back to this structural point. When investigations, reports, and accountability measures are filtered through political loyalty or social influence, justice becomes conditional. Democracy becomes fragile when the public starts asking not, what does the evidence show, but which side benefits if we pay attention? And there's a psychological dimension here too. Continuous exposure to scandal creates what Mockler calls sane washing, a fire hose of outrage, counter-outrage, spin, and gaslighting that numbs public attention. The result isn't clarity, it's emotional fatigue. People stop caring, stop questioning, and slowly accept that those in power can escape accountability because society has grown too exhausted to demand it. But the point of this commentary, the moral spine running through it, is relentless. Accountability must be universal. It does not bend to political affiliation, celebrity, or economic clout. Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, or any other influential figure must face the same scrutiny. Victims must always have a place to report. Evidence must always be examined. And the mechanisms of justice must be stronger than the networks of influence that would otherwise protect the powerful. This is a call for democratic resilience. When societies accept selective impunity, the rule of law risks being replaced by the rule of loyalty, allowing corruption to grow quietly across political and social lines. Democracy depends on impartial accountability, where scrutiny applies equally to politicians, billionaires, and celebrities. As emphasized by Adam Mockler, truth must come before influence and justice before political loyalty.